I turned up and I spent the day in a bad mood, bizarrely, because I realized I'd been missing out on this, that all the people there were my friends and they just didn't know it yet. And there was a sort of rope barrier. The public stay on this side, the artists on the other side. And I'm like, no, I need to be on the other side. I took some of these leaves and made a sort of large spiral there. And I realized I had a little small crystal in the van, and I put that at the heart of this, buried it in the ground at the heart of it. And then I stood there and I had a real sense of the energy of the spiral going down and up both way. And that's what I was meditating on. And then I was listening to a podcast, and she says, I happen to have a crystal there. And I put this into the environment and imagined the sort of energy of this going down and going up. It was exactly what I'd just done, in that I'd just done this, and then I hear it.
Welcome to the Enchanted Earth Podcast, where you will hear stories of nature with the power to transform our lives. These sacred stories are begging to be shared now. So listen in as my guest today shares one of their own.
So welcome, everybody. Today we have with us a special guest, Laurence Winram. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Laurence. He's a land artist based in Scotland. He produces deeply meditative pieces, often making use of animation to create a sense of wonder and connection to nature. So welcome today, Laurence.
Thank you. Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
I was so excited that you agreed to be on this podcast because I found you on Instagram and you were promoting the Land Art Festival.
I'm one of 3 directors of it when I first found out about it in 2018. So I turned up and instantly knew this is my world. And to the point where you get those moments, you're talking about moments that sort of have an influence on you. It was absolutely no doubt. I turned up and I spent the day in a bad mood, bizarrely, because I realized I'd been missing out on this, that all the people there were my friends and they just didn't know it yet. And there was a sort of rope barrier. The public stay on this side, the artists on the other side. And I'm like, no, I need to be on the other side. It sounds a little arrogant for somebody who's not been really making land art, but I just knew that I would be a part of that. And I've just become very embedded in that world. And there is a small coterie of regulars in that world. And I very much become a part of that.
Yeah, I saw the photographs from the festival that you took, and I was just like, wow, I have to see if he will come on and talk about nature because, of course, doing this type of work, this is your soul path, this intimate connection with the natural world. That is what it is, isn't it?
Yes, it certainly is. I think as my life's gone on, I felt very much drawn to the nature that, yes, we all have this soul's path, which is, of course, a thing. If you just speak to people on a day to day, a lot of them will look at you like, what on earth are you talking about? And of course, there will be those others that are completely embrace and understand what this is and elements of how that functions. Finding that it is, for me, in part, this time immersing in nature and sharing it. I feel great joy in that. I know this is what I'm meant to do. I feel it strongly. Yeah. Getting to be part of that and knowing that there's a difference that I think, of course, we don't have to remember that in a sense, but I kind of enjoy it. I enjoy it. I have a chuckle because I'm like, yeah, this is what I'm called here to do. And that makes it all the more fun.
I would love to dive into a little bit of your childhood in connection to nature. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yes, I wasn't particularly drawn to or connected with school because it was a world that was a little sort of alien to me. And as a family, we were very blessed to have a cottage. We lived in a village, so that was quite homely and protective. And it was quite a gentle, small village school, which was a blessing for a sort of sensitive kid back in that sort of in the 1970s. And but I just didn't flourish in that environment. But when I found myself at this cottage that we had at the weekends, every holiday, every weekend, and we ended up working up there and just became very much a part of that community. And it was 50 miles away in the Highlands of Scotland. And we had a little sort of tin roofed shack that didn't have electricity until I was 12. Didn't even have a toilet. So it was pretty primitive, but you just accept whatever is going on for you. It was normal. I'm drawn to these places now. I want to stay in places that don't have any electricity. I just was staying somewhere just now in Wales that didn't have this. And it brings it all back. It brings it back to the connection you get, the more separated you are from that sort of city world and the modern aspects of it, the more the opportunity to immerse in the natural world. And it was absolutely glorious environment. It was the fields surrounding us largely were not even tilled. They weren't farmed fully because the soil was quite rough. So it's the same field as in its natural state that it would have been in for probably thousands of years. They'd grown forestry around us, but it was surrounded by hills, absolutely beautiful mountains that you, as a child, you do take an element of it for granted. But at the same time, I knew this was something quite profound. And my earliest memories are of being down at the stream at the bottom of the sort of garden. There was a little stream by the side of the road. And we'd build dams and things like this. And my earliest memory is of being at that stream and going, I can't see them. I can't see the magical things in there that I had some sort of vague memory of, that there was something other within that. And I was always there feeling terribly drawn to it, but also slightly disappointed that the sort of magic, or I didn't know what the words were for it at the time, that the magic of it wasn't as tangible. But the older you'd grow, the less it became something I could hold on to. But that sense of magic of it was really strong for that little stream, that tiny little burn that ran the side of a main road. And I think now my parents, I'm like, what were you doing letting us as 2-3-year-olds roaring around there, right beside the road, cars roaring by? But that was the 1970s, different era. Don't get run down. So it was a glorious time. That and the forests around us. The forests were all coniferous ones, farmed forests. It's far up in the Highlands, so there's not a lot of broadleaf forests because they don't flourish in that higher, colder altitude. So the forests were very much crop, but they were large, overgrown forests with lots of trees down and just had a beautiful sound to them. And my memories of great fun memories of early proto-land art elements of dragging my heel through the earth, the pine needles, to create these paths between trees where the small stream would run around these trees as it's going down. And I just loved all that. And then the hills around, there was a golden eagle that in the tree that was up in one of the valleys there. And the trees at the tops of the hills were all bent over like something from Lord of the Rings. And we call that was like the magic wood and crowwood. So the places for us, especially for me, that I was always this connection of there's something greater than the sum of the parts there. And it almost frustrated me that it wasn't more acknowledged, that it was something I just felt and I wouldn't have had the proper words for. But I look back on it now and I think, what a perfect childhood and how blessed I was to get to be in that environment. And I'd quite happily spend hours down at the river. My brother would love to fish, but I'd just be pottering. I'd just be in the water looking at reflections, looking for treasure constantly. Crystals, I dug crystals out of the ground. And I loved going to the source of a stream and seeing a spring bubbling out of the ground. I just thought this was magical. This has maybe led to some of the problems at school where people say, what game do you support? What football team do you support? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't follow any football. I'm completely not interested. But
I can tell you where the source of the river is, though. How cool.
Yeah. It doesn't go down well when you're like 8 years old. You just sound a bit like you're disconnected from that world. Yeah, I did. I loved that. And very often at the weekends, I would cycle the couple of miles up the valley and then traipse across a field with a hammer and chisel, or just even just a 6-inch nail, and root around in the ground for these amethysts that were there. And you had all kinds of crystals that were there. So we could just dig them out of the ground. And I remember pulling these out of the ground and showing people and going, look at this. Isn't this utterly miraculous? And them going, oh yeah, that's nice. But I'm like, no, you don't understand. This is really special. But it was my thing. I look and think, you can't expect other people to be tuned in just because it was my thing. And now I'm so drawn to that, and I have a greater community of people who had similar childhoods or get that and embrace those ideas.
Yeah, there's some similarities with my childhood. More not the landscape, unfortunately, but more the interest in the water and the rocks. And I was a big geology buff. So anything earth science, I was like, yeah, that's for me. But yeah, that is just beautiful. And you don't have to convince me how magical Scotland is, because it has been a place that I have wanted to go since I was a child. And I was so fortunate to go a couple of years ago and spend 10 days in the Highlands. And it is just one beautiful vista after another, but much more than that, a real strong sense of magical or enchanted presence in the landscape that's really hard to explain.
Yes.
In words.
Yes. Yeah. These days, if anytime there's an opportunity, I just want to have us go away in the camper van to those enchanted places. When I'm just back from Wales, there was a gathering of land artists. It wasn't like a festival. It was more of just as Rachel put it, a retreat. Rachel's a very connected person, and it was just like a come and immerse yourself in this sort of magic in this environment. And it's just, we go from one sort of holy spot, Angel Mountain or whatever, these different places that Rachel knows. So, and all the beaches and the forests and things there are just as magical, just as special. And she knows the environment there. And she's built a 3-story bale house with no mains electricity, no mains water. And it was all built by women as well, about 20 years ago. So we were staying in there. So everybody the few of us that were there, it was only 5, but we're all tuned into the same kind of mindset. So it's lovely to have that community.
Yeah. And when you were sharing about being at that festival as a bystander, observer,
Yes.
watching all the artists at work, I could just feel that pain of where have I been that this was possible.
Yeah. The crazy thing was I had books by there's a famous, possibly the most famous land artist that's actually got a wonderful exhibition on in Edinburgh at the moment, is Scottish artist Andy Goldsworthy, and his work is all over the world and wonderful, and he's just an incredible artist. And it was a second visit to that exhibition the other day, and I'm both inspired and awed and almost a little depressed by at the same time, because a part of me goes, oh my goodness, he's chosen. I was very conscious. He made the choice to immerse himself wholly and completely in that world. And, to do it with total and utter commitment to his craft, I'm not going to compromise. This is how I'm going to live. And I just you saw him from a young age completely immerse himself in environment when clearly before he was the sort of internationally renowned artist he is today, he was committed to his craft so completely. And I thought it's lovely to see that. And it's also a little daunting thinking, I'm not fully choosing to do that because I have my mainstream work as a commercial photographer. So I still continue to do that. And I'm sometimes a little conflicted because I'm trying to shift things. And literally today was meant to be set aside today for building a print website for my land art. But with one thing or another, we had visits to the vets and things like this today. So one thing or another, there's things going on that there's always something that seems to be slowing that process, but you realize you need to make the commitment to these things. Totally.
Oh, how interesting. Because I wasn't sure if I was going to have to do an emergency run to the vet as well today.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But thankfully, it looks like things are getting better. So,
Yes.
wow. Yeah, there is this longing within us when we find our calling. There's this longing to just immerse in this work. But then there's the 3D reality of our world.
Yes. I'm conscious of this notion of what we're manifesting, and it's our minds. All the data and increasingly the science seems to point towards it is our consciousness that's primary, and that our thoughts are manifesting what's here. Everything I see, read, and understand, especially in science now, it seems to be catching up with what the various religions and mystics have been saying for thousands of years. And I realize there's believing or there's understanding that, but to what extent you can wholly embody that. And that, in a sense, is a challenge. But I say that's the challenge. That's a manifestation of something. And that's, when I use the words like that, I'm conscious of it, hear that voice behind me. But I have to say that being in nature, being in those environments has been the thing that's shifted. I've felt the shift in my consciousness, my awareness has happened by increasingly spending time in forests and beaches and with these other artists. And you've just realized how it changes you. You work in any environment enough, it's going to have its impact. But that change really ramped up during lockdown we had here during COVID, where we couldn't go out anywhere. And we were very blessed to have a garden. And I had a garden full of stones that I'd already taken from beaches and things near me. And I just spent so much of that time sitting there designing or playing or stacking these rocks as I was doing at the time. I was a little more drawn to that side of things at the time. And it made me slow down, and it made me attune to the natural world more, and particularly to the sounds and the sounds of the leaves, the sounds of the trees above my head. And became a little bit more like a language that I couldn't write down exactly what it's trying to say, but it talked to me in another way. And that happened by the sheer volume of days spent outside in that environment. And I realized, wow, these environments change you. You spend all day, every day in an office. That's going to have an impact on you as well. I was being enforced. I couldn't work. And I realized after a certain amount of time, look, I can stress about this all I like, but I just paid to be on a retreat the year before. This is pretty much like the retreat, and I'm stressing about the money, but here I am, yourself in the moment more. And that sort of seemed to benefit.
So your life after COVID, as it relates to this work, did it change?
After COVID, it just became quite a bit less, I'd say. It was quiet. Works became quieter. And I think I also, when I had free time, when I do have free time even now, I am more inclined to spend it on land art. My sort of internal self is all focused in that direction. And I'm less and less motivated by the financial side of things. As long as I have enough to survive, I have no interest anymore. I never really had a great deal of it, but no interest in having more money. I'd like to have, enough. And there's enough. Sometimes it's a bit scary, a bit lower, but I just realized you see all these pictures and footage of millionaires and billionaires these days, and they all look blooming miserable. They all look so unhappy. And you're like, it's clear. It's this. And I love data. I'm a big science fan as well. This science is super clear. There's no correlation between wealth and happiness. Once your immediate needs are met, it's cancelled. It's gone. Like having, enough to survive and then having 5 times that, your happiness is not markedly going to change. It's that's all what's inside. That's how it works.
So tell us about an experience that you had in the natural world that was moving to you.
I'd say a favorite has been the one around land art, has been that of course you find yourself grasping, as so often part of the human condition. We maybe don't put it in that language, but I really do think it is. I think it's in sort of Buddhist sense, you'd say, and where are your attachments? And my attachment is often in making land art is I want to have some beautiful piece to show off at the end, like for myself, of course. But there's always many layers to these things, and so when I head off, I bring my camera, my tripod, and sometimes even a light. Because of my background as a photographer, I love, and it's very much a part of the process, is for me to record this, because I get a great deal of pleasure out of, I know exactly how to do that to make it look as best as it possibly can. So I'm picking the location, where the light's going to be, where's the sun going to be in 4 hours from now, all these things. I love all that. You immerse yourself completely in that. And I love that. And I like the fact that I do get this lovely image at the end of the day. I'd made a plan to, at the right time of year, it's generally the beginning of November, this is a few years ago, to head to there's a sort of grand house that's got sort of stately grounds around it near where I live, New Hills Estate. And people usually walk their dogs there. But I scrabble in under the undergrowth, under the low trees. There's a sort of small field of low young beech trees, and at the beginning of November you've got every color, almost the full rainbow of colors there, and it's wonderful. So I go in and I'll often clear a spot and think, what am I going to make? Maybe animate something, make a spiral or something. I was slightly early to that. I keep doing a little bit things a bit more experimentally now, but back then I was thinking, yeah, let's see if I can make a spiral going from this lime green to the deeper greens to the oranges and the yellows and the reds of all the leaves. Just transition on the spiral of leaves. And you begin gathering all these leaves. And I've got to pick a few small of the green ones, but most of them are what's just been fallen there. And in that process, that's when the sort of joy in me opens up, because you're so often thinking of the end, but actually you've got to bring it to mind that it is the doing. It is not it's in the being in the moment that it becomes richer. And I was really feeling that, and I really tried to bring it to mind that, hey, look, I'm getting to do this. Let's not be focused on the end product here. It's here and now. This is the moment right now while we're making this. We think of things in terms of their result. We think of these events that happen in our lives. It's all of the line of it, all unfolding all the time. That's the important bit. And there's something about doing that and being immersed in it and completely in the zone with it that I think, and being conscious of that I really got this absolute high out of, and I was just loving it. And I started to lay down some of these leaves. And this happens occasionally, but it seems at that location, it's quite strong with it. The little robin comes down beside me, and he's sitting right beside me and just literally 2-3 inches away from where I'd be working. And it was glorious. And as I'd be laying these things down, of course, I'm disturbing the forest floor. And the little robin there is, yeah, this is great. This is grand for me. So every time I'd lay down some of the leaves, I'd go up, stand up to go and get some more. I'd come back, and this little robin would have flipped over just what I'd done. And every time I'm getting up, so I literally couldn't make what I was doing because the robin got so involved. And I was kind of loving all this. It was just quite sweet. And then I persevered, and I started to get this, and I started filming the robin. I got some lovely footage of it. And I didn't mind this happening at all, because I realized it's the process. It's the being here. Stop thinking of the end product. And eventually I started to get there, and I thought, hopefully, if I'm quick enough, I'll get there without this robin destroying everything. And then I went to collect the last few leaves, and I came back, and a big breeze just blew the lot away, almost all of them away. And I just laughed and laughed. And I honestly left that day like with this huge grin on my face, and I was laughing on the way home. And I thought, great, what a fun day. And I didn't take one picture. And that was great because I'm usually so often grasping for the thing. Look what I've done. And this moment was just being and just this playful thing. And what better lesson in non-attachment to have this little bird in the breeze come along. I like the idea of I think it's Native American culture. They have the divine trickster that comes along, or even if they're having a powwow, they'd have somebody run through the camp and turn bowls and knock things over, push people over and yell to go, hey, don't take yourself so damn seriously. And I wish they'd have them in the various parliaments and governments of the world. I guess that's the job of the comedians these days, but it was just a joy to have that sort of disrupted and not to grasp as much. And I left and thought, oh, I managed to hold on to just the joy of the being and could let go of that. Because I know a lot of people might leave a situation like this saying, oh, nightmare. This is the phrase people use, nightmare. And you're like, really? What's it? Eckhart Tolle expresses this very well. He says, you're always just being wherever you are. It's what are you being in that moment? What are you perceiving?
What did you need to experience at that moment in time? Was this playfulness of the robin and the wind?
Yeah.
And just like you said, learning that, coming back to that impermanence and non-attachment of life.
Yeah.
What a beautiful gift.
Yeah. Those natural environments there, for me, I guess it's where I'm drawn in that way. And increasingly, I think it was always there, that there's an intuitive knowing of where they are. These people see, it's said there are sacred sites, there are byways, there are ley lines, there are whatever they are. But I don't know, I guess to some people, they may just perceive these as, oh, it's just what we aesthetically are drawn to, where there's this lovely balance of land. It's an aesthetic thing. But for me, there's something more than that. And why are we so drawn to, like in Wales, where we drove to this wonderful churchyard with a grove of ancient yew trees. And why are certainly all the land artists, why are so many people, what is it about that? They just have this energy about them, and they just invite quiet, they invite reflection. And it was lovely in Wales because we were all there and all on the same page for that. You're sometimes in these environments and just one or two people who are really tuning into that. And then a lot of other people who are just, oh yeah, that's great. And they're just storming through. I'm like, oh, slow down. Take your time. Look at that. Look at the moss growing on that tree. And it's easy to miss.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I did want to ask you, like, that sense of being drawn to these landscapes and a specific place in the landscape to erect the art. Do you ever get a sense that within you that this is an offering to Mother Earth when you're doing it?
Oh yeah, completely. I think I just had too many sort of synchronicities around that. I went up north a couple of months ago to a favorite spot by the River Quoich, which is a very magical place. As soon as you're there, for me, it's very powerful. And it's these lovely old Scots pine trees that have been there for thousands of years. And because it's in a tight, steep valley, the land is untouched. No one's going to be farming or doing anything with that. And you go and you just feel it there. You feel it strongly. And the roots, kind of huge roots curling around massive boulders. And the water, unlike a lot of water in Scotland, because it comes from a mountain that is extremely just solid rock. And that's where a lot of these beautiful crystal formations are. There are smoky quartz and garnets and amethysts in the mountains around there, especially the smoky quartz. We call them cairngorms. The Victorians were a little obsessed by them. So there's this mountain, and the An, And the koi comes from around that area and it comes down. And the water, because of the mineral content there, is incredibly clear because there's no peat. There's very little peat. Generally, the rivers in Scotland are a little peaty, they're a little dark, and it runs clear. But the color, it's also got this deep green. So there are these deep pools that are just luminescent green and with these huge rooted trees curling around. And it's such an invitation to create art around. And the last time I was there, I made this sort of spiral into the ground. I made a spiral on the ground of broom leaves. And these are flowers, the flowers of them, which are tiny, like this size, but I'd gathered quite a lot. There was literally thousands of these broom plants there. I only take these things when there's an abundance of them because I'm conscious. You don't want to have a negative impact, but I took some of these leaves and made a sort of large spiral there. And I realized I had a small crystal in the van, and I put that at the heart of this, buried it in the ground at the heart of it. And then I stood there and I had a real sense of the energy of the spiral going down and up both way. And that's what I was meditating on. And then I was listening to a podcast, and I can't remember the name. Stephanie something, it will come to me in a minute, but I was listening to a podcast and she was just talking about going to special places. She says, I love this time I went to this special place and I happened to have a crystal there, and I put this into the environment and imagined the sort of energy of this going down and going up. It was exactly what I'd just done in that I'd just done this, and then I hear it. And those synchronicities are like, that's the school method of going, you're getting that. I love Jung and these sort of ideas of the archetype and of synchronicity. And I have had a lot of that around just throughout my life. And that was a lovely one to get that. It feels like an affirmation of what you're doing.
I wanted to ask you a simple question about the perfection of the art itself. When you're doing it, you're creating it, you are looking for the perfect sizes, the perfect placement. And I'm curious, when you're working with a group in a workshop and people are contributing, how much does that perfection or that desire for perfection of this like sacred geometry get in the way of people participating? Because there is that, you want it to look just right because there's something about the sacred geometry that clicks in. It's just,
yes, you feel
and when it's off a little, it's just not right.
Yes. There's a land artist friend of mine, James Brunt, who does a lot of workshops with school children. That's his sort of, largely his sort of day-to-day job. And his work's wonderful, his personal work. He just posted something that was just this pristine piece, I think, of birch leaves going out with this perfect fractal shape coming out, like a Fibonacci spiral coming out with several hundred of these leaves perfectly placed. It was miraculous. If you look up James Brunt, land artist, you'll see the image at some point. A glorious work. But he works a lot with school children. And of course, you just can't, especially with children, you just can't. You just have to set that aside. But I'm like, oh, what a perfect lesson. It's like the version of the robin and the breeze. It's a kind of bring in your humility here. Set aside this. I think of it as the spike of our desire for this wanting of this thing. And remember, it's about the process. It's about the being in it. It's about that. Yes, it is a challenge for me because I do like things to be precise. I would like to embrace the things not being as precise, and yet that's the way I'm wired. I accept that. But in workshops, I think one of the recent ones I did, I started with a very almost perfect spiral in the middle, and I invited people. I said, I just figured this would be a nice way to work. I'm going to start with something here. We'll section this off to a degree. Now, I want each of you to build whatever you want in there. Now, it can be anything you want, but try and keep a degree of symmetry so that whatever you do, it points towards the middle. So we keep an element of a mandala. But it was miraculous what people made. Someone made an entire butterfly wing with the stones that were there, the tiny stones, and it was absolutely perfect. And other people have just got these sort of wiggly lines coming off. And it wasn't symmetrical, and it wasn't perfect in that way. And yet it was. I completely saw all the perfection of it in that way. You look at a medicine wheel, you look at Callanish stone circle, famous sort of sacred sites, and they're not made perfectly in that perfect geometry. And I wonder if it's a little bit of a modern mind that is drawn to that. And yet you see that perfection in a sunflower head, in a flower. We see it in nature. And I am drawn to that. But I embrace the unknown and the thing that will humble me, the child coming along and placing this off. And I have in the past corrected. I've been working with some other people and they've went, oh no, we'll just move that here. And there's always a little bit of a debate. I was just making we were working on a sand drawing in Wales. And I was like, oh, I've never made a sand drawing before. It's not something I've ever felt drawn to do. And I was like, I'll just go make something off to the side. And Tim, one of the people I was with, he just said, right, you're making the center. You're going to make the very center of this. But you just do what you do, not with sand art, but with anything you want, with stones, with shells, with whatever. And I gathered these berries and I made a design there. And that's lovely because each of us are bringing in our own element. And we were all land artists, so we were all quite in tune. But it's interesting. Everyone's got these different ways of perceiving and interpreting that. There's Tim. He said he never likes to talk about the whole process. He embraces a very, largely like myself, a non-dual kind of understanding of things. Just let your consciousness flow. Stop letting your mind get too far in the way, and things will unfold in their own way. And then there was John and Rachel and Layla. They discussed things quite a lot more. And they all worked together and they made this exceptional design. And I was apprehensive at the beginning because I thought, I've never been involved with something like this, not done a lot of group things with other land artists. And I just started and then I just got this total joy because I'm like, stop concerning yourself. Everybody's loving and accepting and whatever. It's a lovely lesson in always letting that go. And so that was fun. Greater challenges working with children, greater challenges working with the public in that way. But I'm pushing myself not to be there going correct, because what does that mean? It's about nurturing the other person. It's time for us to step aside. It's not about me. It's about the process. It's about everybody else there.
So wonderful to hear. Now, I don't consider myself an artist, but I do build simple flower mandalas with clients on their land to help honor their land. And
Lovely.
in that process, it is just organic, whatever, wherever they want, how I want at the moment. And it is just a lovely expression of deep reverence, I feel.
Yes. Yeah, these things, I didn't really understand the value of them in the past. And I used to think, oh, what is this doing? What is this saying? And you realize everything can be ceremony. And to create your own ceremonies, this is a really important stuff to do. Every piece of land art to me is a ceremony. That's an important thing to do, and to be doing it with clients. That sounds wonderful.
And when I look at photographs of your work on Instagram, I'm just reminded, what really hits me is that nature comes alive. It becomes so vibrant with energy, and it just raises the frequency of the land wherever you and land artists work. It's just a real gift.
It's nice to see at the festivals, or even when you're just working out somewhere randomly, that somebody just walks by. I had a day on the beach, and my wife was doing a 9-kilometer swim down a river, in a freezing river in Berwick,
Wow.
just at the border between Scotland and England yesterday. And I just spent an hour and a half or so on the beach making a triple arm Triskelion design. So like a triple spiral together with the tiny stones that are there. And largely, very few people notice this. They're just walking by. Very often people will walk right through and walk on top of what you make, because people generally are not terribly observant of what's going on. They're lost in conversation, or they're lost in thought, or they're on their phone or something like this. I've learned not to. You don't have judgment of that. It's just everybody's where they're doing the best they can. And it's a great lesson in not grasping to have these things be destroyed. Dogs will very often come up and run through what you do. And usually I go, oh, shoot, and then laugh. I made a big black and white spiral with stones that I really liked. And then a big Dalmatian ran into the middle of it. And the owner's mortified. And I'm just laughing. And I got footage of this. And I was like, this is perfect. This is beautiful.
Black and white dog. Yeah.
Mirror of it. Yes. Yeah. But creating those ceremonies there and then, it's wonderful to do.
Laurence, this has been such a pleasure talking to you about your life's work. And I just want to leave it open to you if there's anything else you'd like to share before we close.
What I'd say is to people to most definitely give it a go, to go out there, to try to create something. That the greatest challenge is to be able to do that without judgment of yourself. We generally reserve our greatest judgments for ourselves. And I remember that same feeling as a child, scrunching up the bits of paper because the drawing I was working on just wasn't the vision that I had in my head. And why is this not working? And when you embrace it's not the end product, it's the process, it's the being in the moment, it's creating the quiet moment of it. That's the richness of it. And if it collapses or blows away or whatever, sometimes all the better for teaching you. So I really love the European Land Art Festival, which we have every July here in Dunbar in Scotland, for holding a space for people where they're comfortable to do that. It's lovely to see those people that come in, the ones that are looking a little bit doubtful, and they keep their distance, and then give them a couple of minutes and they're coming a little bit closer, a little bit closer, a little bit closer. And then eventually, an hour later, as a family on their knees, all making something. And it doesn't matter what it looks like. It's the fact that you're holding the space for them to do. That's the real magic. That's the richness. We all like the magical, those moments, but we're born into this life of forgetting of this human, rather dense life, in order to remember in our own ways and have those moments. And I think a lot of the time, the real magic, the richness is just in without something miraculous happening, someone learns and opens up just that tiny bit. That's what I'd invite people to do. And that's I think, in a way, why I do what I do.
Actually, you could say the same for me in doing this podcast as well.
Yes.
Trying to open up just a little bit to that joy, that just being in the moment in nature.
Yeah. Such
a pleasure speaking with you today. And I thank you so much for taking your time.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. It was a joy. I just love the work that you're doing. It's positive.
Thank you. Thank you, Laurence. And I just invite all the listeners to please like and subscribe, and please comment. I would love to hear what this might have brought up for you. Any kind of land art that you've done in the past, or maybe something you're inspired to go out there and do. So have a magical day, everybody.
Thank you for being a part of the Enchanted Earth Podcast. Please hit the subscribe button so that you'll know when we publish another inspiring episode. Check out my book, The Enchanted Earth, available wherever online books are sold. Thank you and have a magical day.